I had imagined this day since I was a little girl, but not even my wildest dreams felt this beautiful. Standing there in my white gown, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman smiling back. Everything felt right. The delicate lace on my sleeves, the soft curls brushing my shoulders, the way the light followed me like a spotlight from heaven. And Daniel, my Daniel, stood beside me, looking at me like I was his forever. The ceremony was perfect. Better than any movie, better than any fairy tale. Our vows felt like something we'd written in another lifetime, like soulmates finally speaking out loud. When we kissed, the crowd clapped, some even cried. The reception came alive with music, with laughter, with so much love it felt like the walls could barely hold it in. I remember gliding from one table to the next, soaking it all in. The flowers, the food, the smiling faces. My heart was full. But then, not long after dinner, I started to feel strange. A wave of nausea, a twist in my gut I couldn't explain. I thought maybe it was the wine, or the nerves, or just the whirlwind of it all hitting me at once. I leaned in, whispered to Daniel that I needed some air. He barely looked up. So I smiled, touched his shoulder, and stepped outside into the night, hoping the cool breeze would calm me. I left to clear my head. What I found shattered my heart. The air outside felt sharp against my skin, like the night was trying to wake me from some daze. I walked past the noise, past the glowing lights of the reception, toward the quiet side of the garden where no one ever really went. My dress rustled softly with each step, the hem brushing against the stone path. I took a deep breath, expecting calm, but something in me stayed unsettled. I felt like I was holding my breath without even knowing why. It wasn't just nausea anymore. It was something else, a heaviness in my chest, a strange sense that I wasn't alone, not just physically but emotionally. The kind of shift that makes your instincts stir before your brain can catch up. I paused near a patch of roses, the same color as my lipstick, and leaned against the wall to steady myself. From there, I could still hear the faint music playing, the laughter, the clinking of glasses. Everyone inside thought the bride was having her perfect night. But out here, something was unraveling. I didn't know what yet, but I felt it, like the universe was holding its breath right along with me. I looked up at the sky, at the stars that had started to peek through the dusk, and tried to remind myself that I was happy. Wasn't I? That I had everything I wanted. That I had Daniel, my husband, my best friend. I was about to turn back inside, ready to pull myself together. But something made me stay just a second longer. That's when I heard it. A low laugh, muffled, intimate. Not from the reception, not part of the party. It was coming from the other side of the hedge, where the garden curved around toward the fountain. My heart kicked hard in my chest. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a couple sneaking a cigarette. Maybe a pair of teenagers being silly. But my feet started moving before I could stop them, pulled by something I couldn't name yet. I stepped carefully, almost as if I didn't want to make a sound. Like I already knew that whatever I was about to see, I wouldn't be able to unsee. My heels clicked against the stone path like tiny warnings. And then, through the leaves, I saw two silhouettes. Close. Closer than close. His hand on her waist, her hand in his hair. And then, the kiss. My world didn't crash down. It crumbled, quietly, softly, like paper burning in slow motion. I didn't move, couldn't move. My fingers gripped the side of the archway, my breath caught in my throat. They didn't see me. They were too wrapped up in each other to even realize they weren't alone. And I was still in my wedding dress, still wearing the veil, still glowing, but for all the wrong reasons now. I had left to clear my head. What I found shattered my heart. At first, my mind couldn't catch up with my eyes. I just stood there, paralyzed, like time had folded in on itself. I blinked, hoping maybe, just maybe, I was wrong. But no. There he was, Daniel, my husband, kissing her like the world didn't exist. And her, Sabrina, my maid of honor, my best friend since college. She was still wearing the dress I picked out. still had traces of my lipstick on her cheek from when we hugged earlier. The garden smelled like roses and betrayal. There was a soft trickle from the fountain nearby, a peaceful sound that now felt cruel in its calm. Everything looked the same, but everything had changed. My hands trembled, my mouth went dry. I wanted to scream, to collapse, to claw the moment out of existence. But I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. I just stared. Like if I stayed quiet long enough, the scene would rewrite itself. But it didn't. They kissed again, slower this time, more deliberate, as if I hadn't just promised to love and honor that man in front of God and everyone I know, as if this wasn't my wedding day. I pressed my hand against my chest, feeling my heart pound like it wanted to escape, not just from the pain, but from the humiliation. I wasn't just being cheated on. I was being erased, right there, in real time. And they had no idea. I should have turned away. I should have run. But I couldn't. My feet felt cemented to the ground, like the truth had nailed me in place. My eyes locked onto them, not out of curiosity, but because looking away felt like surrender. I wanted to see every second of it, every sickening stolen moment. I wanted it branded into my memory, not so I could suffer, but so I would never forget. Not who they were, not what they did, not how it felt to be erased in white. I kept thinking, how long? How many moments like this had happened behind my back? How many times had they laughed at me while I planned the wedding? Had Sabrina zipped up my dress that morning knowing exactly what she'd do hours later? The betrayal wasn't just in the kiss. It was in every lie that led to it. Every smile, every toast, every I love you they threw at me like confetti, knowing it was hollow. And still, they didn't see me. I could have walked right into the scene and they would have flinched like thieves caught mid-crime. But I didn't give them that. I stood still, quiet, watching two people I loved rip the heart out of me, gently, like it was a favor. And as I slowly stepped back, veil brushing my shoulders, the irony hit me hard. I had just said I do, while they had already decided they would too, to each other. Back inside, the music played on like nothing had happened. Like the bride hadn't just watched her world crack in two under fairy lights. I walked slowly, carefully, like one wrong step would make the pain spill out of me. I didn't cry. Not then. I think part of me shut down. Survival mode, maybe. I kept replaying the image in my head, his hand gripping her waist, her lips parting like the kiss was owed to her, and all of it happening with my veil still on. I made it to the bathroom and locked the door behind me. The silence in there felt different, thicker. I stared at myself in the mirror, half expecting to see a different woman looking back. But it was still me. Still the bride. Except now the glow was gone. My face looked pale, my eyes too wide, too hollow. I reached for a paper towel, not for the tears. There were none, but to wipe away the sweat that had gathered on my temples. I had been cheated, yes. But worse, I had been played. I stood there for what felt like hours, breathing, blinking, building something inside me I didn't even recognize yet. This wasn't the part where I fall apart. This wasn't where I scream or throw things or beg. No. I wasn't going to give them that scene. If they wanted a moment, I'd give them one, but it would be on my terms. I tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear, fixed my lipstick, and looked at myself one last time. The veil was still on my head, and the knife was already in my back. I walked back into that reception like I hadn't just watched my world collapse behind a hedge. No one noticed the change in me, not yet. The light still twinkled, the music still played, and Daniel was back at the table, laughing like nothing was out of place. Sabrina had already rejoined the party too, sipping champagne, surrounded by people who thought she was my sister in spirit. I watched them both from a distance, letting their ease feed my focus. I danced, I smiled, I hugged relatives who flew across the country to see us get married. I posed for photos, I told stories, I played the part. Not because I was okay, I wasn't, but because I wasn't about to let them see me fall. I could feel something sharp and cold building in my chest, something stronger than heartbreak. This wasn't weakness. This was clarity. I was no longer confused, no longer naive. I was awake, and I was watching. People say heartbreak is loud. Mine was silent. It didn't scream. It strategized. It listened. It planned. While they toasted our future, I was rewriting the ending. Not for revenge, for truth. Because if I was going to remember this night forever, I was going to take control of what that memory looked like. And somewhere between the small talk and the soft music, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront them in private. I was going to crown them in truth. I kept moving through the room like nothing was wrong, one hand on my bouquet, the other on the pulse of the night. Every laugh, every toast, every well-meaning compliment was like a test I had to pass. And I did, because when people looked at me, they saw a glowing bride, not the woman who'd just had her heart ripped out in a garden. That's the thing about betrayal. It teaches you how to perform, how to become your own armor with grace as your disguise. Daniel came over once, kissed me on the cheek, and asked if I was okay. I smiled, said I was just a little tired. He touched my back lightly, like he was proud of me, like we were in this together. It took everything in me not to flinch. I looked him in the eyes and nodded, feeling the heat behind my smile. He had no idea. Neither did she. Sabrina was floating across the room, charming my mother, laughing with the DJ, dancing like she hadn't poisoned the entire evening with a single kiss. While they played their roles, I began planning mine. I texted the photographer, asked for a copy of the photos already taken, made sure the projector was still hooked up and ready to go. My fingers moved fast, steady. No hesitation. I knew exactly what I needed. Not a confrontation, a reveal. And not just for me, for everyone. Let them see what I saw. Let them understand what I carried inside my quiet smile. Because silence, in the right hands, becomes a weapon. The hours blurred after that. Cake was served. A slow song played. People danced like nothing in the world could touch them. And me? I was calm, almost too calm, like something inside me had gone cold, not from defeat, but from determination. I kept watching them, not obsessively, just enough. Enough to memorize how easily they could smile with my name still on their lips. Enough to remember how betrayal can dress itself in celebration. I stood near the edge of the dance floor, my gown fanned out like a lie that was about to collapse in on itself. And I thought about all the things I could do. All the ways I could ruin them. But revenge didn't feel right. Not exactly. What I wanted wasn't to hurt them. It was to unmask them. To show everyone who they really were while they still thought they were untouchable. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. Dangerous even, in a quiet kind of way. So I waited. I smiled. I sipped champagne I could barely taste, and when someone asked if I was ready for the thank you speech, I nodded. Not because I had something sweet to say, but because I had something unforgettable to deliver. The microphone was already in the DJ's hand. The projector was warming up behind me. The photo? Ready. And me? I wasn't just the bride anymore. I was the storm they never saw coming. I took the mic with a steady hand. My voice, clear, calm. Not a single crack. People quieted down immediately. After all, the bride was about to speak. Some raised their glasses, others reached for their phones to record. Daniel gave me that look, proud, a little smug, like he expected me to say something poetic about love. Sabrina clapped softly from her seat near the front, eyes shining with the kind of confidence only liars wear. I started light, thanked the guests for coming, complimented the flowers, the food, even the playlist. I mentioned how beautiful the night had been, how grateful I was to be surrounded by people who meant so much to me. I could feel everyone leaning in, waiting for the emotional high note, the part where I'd say how lucky I was to have Daniel. And for a second, I almost gave it to them. Almost. But then I turned to her first. To my maid of honor, I said, smiling so wide it almost hurt. Thank you for watching over him so closely tonight. A ripple of polite laughter moved through the room. until people noticed my tone didn't match the words. I turned to Daniel. And to my husband. My voice dropped just enough to make people hold their breath. I hope kissing her was worth what you're about to lose. That's when the photo lit up the screen behind me. Gasps filled the room like a wave crashing over a quiet beach. 1 second it was joy and celebration. The next it was silence so sharp it cut through the music. The photo on the projector didn't leave room for doubt. Daniel, Sabrina, mid-kiss, framed perfectly beneath the garden lights. I watched as heads turned, hands flew to mouths, and chairs creaked from people leaning forward to get a better look. The room wasn't breathing anymore. It was just watching. Daniel's smile vanished before the image even fully loaded. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Just disbelief and panic flooding into his eyes. Sabrina sat frozen, her champagne glass still in midair, like she was hoping this was all a misunderstanding. But there it was. Proof. Projected 10 feet tall behind me. No one could unsee it. No one could pretend it hadn't happened. And I just stood there, not triumphant, not angry, just done. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even raise my voice. That was the power of it. I let the truth speak louder than any meltdown ever could. It wasn't about making a scene. It was about setting the record straight. In 1 image and 2 sentences, I had shifted the entire narrative. The wedding wasn't ruined. It was exposed. And while they scrambled to make sense of the fallout, I looked out at the crowd and realized something. I didn't feel broken. I felt free. I handed the mic back to the DJ and stepped down without another word. The room stayed silent. No applause, no whispers, just stunned stillness. The kind of silence that follows a crash. Some people looked away, embarrassed for me. Others looked at me like I was a legend. But I wasn't looking for sympathy or applause. I didn't need anyone to tell me I was brave. I knew what I had done. And more than that, I knew why. Daniel tried to follow me, stammering my name, but I didn't stop. Sabrina stayed seated, her expression unreadable. Maybe guilt, maybe fear, maybe just the shock of being seen. I passed them both without a glance. Not because I was cold, because I was done. This wasn't about drama anymore. It was about closure, about claiming a story that almost swallowed me whole and rewriting the ending before they could write it for me. I stepped outside into the night, same as before, but everything felt different now. I wasn't dizzy, I wasn't lost, I was clear. There was no more pretending, no more smiling through the pain. The wedding was over, but my story had just begun, and I wasn't walking away ruined. I was walking away rewritten. The annulment was the easy part. A signature, a stamp, a legal erasing of something that had never really been real to begin with. I didn't cry in the courthouse. I didn't wear black. I wore white again, not out of irony, but out of defiance. People whispered, some stared. A few even clapped when I walked out. I didn't do it for them, but I won't lie. The support felt good. Like the universe was patting me on the back and saying, "You did the right thing." The photo made its way online before I could even think about what to do with it. A cousin posted it, then someone else shared it, and within days, it was everywhere. I became that bride, the one who exposed her cheating husband during her own wedding toast. Strangers sent messages. Women from other cities, other countries, wrote to me saying they wished they'd done the same. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. I felt seen. And with that came something I never expected: freedom. I started booking trips, not to escape, but to explore. I got on planes by myself, ate dinner alone, stood in museums and train stations and quiet hotel balconies, just listening to my own thoughts. I wasn't running from the past. I was walking towards something new. I got offered a speaking spot at a women's conference. Dignity after betrayal, they called it. I didn't hesitate. I said yes. The first time I stood in front of a crowd and told my story, my hands shook. Not from fear, from release, from finally letting it all out without shame or apology. I spoke about the dress, the kiss, the photo, but mostly I spoke about what came after. About the quiet mornings when I made coffee just for me, the nights when I finally slept without replaying everything in my head, about learning to live without needing someone to witness it. I talked about how betrayal doesn't end us. It introduces us to the version of ourselves we've been waiting to meet. And as I looked out into that room full of women, some nodding, some crying, some clenching their jaws in recognition, I realized something. This wasn't just about Daniel or Sabrina anymore. It was about all of us who had ever been lied to, discarded, made to feel small, and who decided somehow to rise anyway. In between conferences, I built a new career. One that didn't depend on anyone else's promise. I started writing, consulting, even coaching women who were navigating their own personal upheavals. My pain became a platform, but it never defined me. That part mattered most. I never wanted to be frozen in that wedding photo, veil on, heartbreaking. I wanted to be remembered for the moment after, the one where I stood up, chose myself, and didn't look back. I wish I could say they disappeared. That life dealt them some poetic punishment and I never had to think of them again. But life isn't that clean. Word got back to me months later. Daniel and Sabrina had tried to make it work, tried to turn betrayal into a relationship. But what starts in secrecy rarely survives the light. And sure enough, they fell apart, caught cheating on each other. Again. Because that's who they are. And I'm not her anymore. I didn't smile when I heard it. I didn't toast to their downfall. I just let the news pass through me like a breeze through an open window. Cool, fleeting, irrelevant. They had become background noise in a story that was never really about them in the first place. My healing wasn't tied to their unraveling. My power came from the moment I stopped waiting for closure and gave it to myself. Quietly, fiercely, without permission. They shared a kiss in secret. I shared the truth in front of everyone, and that will always be the difference between us. They lied and hid and hoped I'd never find out. I stood in my gown, heart cracked open, and told the truth anyway. That was my vow. Not to him, not to her, to myself. And I kept it.